Hey guys, and welcome to the fourth of the Let's Code Finance Tracker tutorials. So basically, in our previous video it was ridiculously long and complicated and horrible, so I'm going to make this one short but useful. So at the moment, your remaining box, your remaining budget text block does absolutely nothing and just has some question marks. So what I'm going to do in the summary page, or what I've done, sorry, is first of all in the load transactions function I've just added a double variable here, which is basically turning the app settings total budget field, which in this case let's say it's £1,000. It's basically taking that, turning it into a double for this so that we can actually assign it to the double variable of budget. So once we've got this, it's quite easy because we can just use this code that we've already got running here. So when it goes to the part of working out whether we're withdrawing or whether we're actually depositing, what we can do is just literally do the math sum here. So I'm just doing budget, which was our double variable up here, and I'm doing budget takeaway equals the value of whatever is being selected. So in the first while loop it will go around and we'll get our split data obviously for everything, and I've made another double here called value. Now value is, again, we're just turning the split again 2 into a variable, which is when the while loop is in, let's say, the first entry it finds, if the month matches, which is done here, if it matches, then it gets the actual value that we entered into the transaction. So down here you'll see we've got the text value and we're setting it with the currency and then the actual value of what the person has entered. So what we're doing is we're just taking that value they entered, turning it into a double that we can use again, and then we're just doing the budget minus equals the value, which was whatever they've entered, and then if it's not a withdrawal and it's a deposit, then it does the same thing, but it does budget plus equal value. So basically it just adds on to the budget or takes away from the budget, which then means once all of these have been run, it would let the budget keep calculating until it's complete. And we'll know it's complete when the while loop stops running. So if we put some code after the while loop where the listing's being set, we're actually going to just do this little bit of code here. Now this is more complicated in some ways than it needs to be, but that's just because when I look at a number, if it's, for example, if it's like £10 10p, with the way it was doing it originally, it would have been £10.1, and I know a lot of people know that that is £10 1p, but it would be better if it was £10.10, so you know it's actually a 10 on the end, because normally the zeros, just some people don't add them or whatever, and it won't, you know, the maths generally won't account for them, so we're going to add our own to make it more readable. So all we're doing here is we're just doing a split decimal, so we're going to split the budget once it's been completely, you know, all the values have been added or taken away, etc. We're going to split the budget on its decimal point, and then we're going to use a total to get the length of the split string. So basically if there's only the one value, then it'll just be, the split will just come through as 1. Okay, but if there is a decimal point in the number, then we'll get a return of 2. So basically all we're doing then is we're saying if there's two like entries in this string array here, then we know that they've got a decimal point in the number. So then what we're going to do is we're going to say if the split decimal 1, which is the second half, so it would be, for example, if this was the number here, then what we're saying is if the second part of the split, which would be the 2, ends with a 0, then we're using this not exclamation mark here, so it is in effect if it doesn't end with 0. So if it's like this, then it will run, and if it's like this, then it won't run. So if it doesn't end with 0, then we're going to do the remaining text block, remaining budget text block text, and then we're going to set it to equal the word remaining, colons, space, and then add the currency, and then add the budget. And then on the end, and we're turning the budget, the double value we had, into a string, and then we're adding a 0 on the end of it. And then if it doesn't end in a 0, basically if it's already got a 0 on the end of it, then we'll do the same thing but without the plus 0. And if it doesn't even have a decimal point at all, then it will run the else part of the function, part of the if statement here, and we're just going to do the budget.toString plus 0.00 so that you can see the decimal point to, so that they know it's a rounded number. And then obviously on the request page, we want when the summary is loading, if people are putting in 7.9, then it will come out as 7.9. So what we're doing is I just added a little bit of code on the finish button, making sure once the value is notified, noticed that it's actually more than 0, so the value isn't 0, then we'll use the same bit of code that we had on the previous page that I was just talking about, where this time we'll take the amount text box, because on the designer of the request page you'll see that our box here is the amount text box. So we'll take that, we'll take the text of it, split it on the decimal point again. If there is a decimal point and it doesn't end with 0, then we run this bit of code here, which is to change the amount text box text to be equal to the amount text box text plus the 0 on the end, so I'm missing 0. And of course, if it doesn't have a decimal point at all, then it's going to add the .00 for us. So it's pretty simple, but more importantly, it works. So the only thing at the moment I haven't added, which I will do when I'm cleaning things up later, is if you finish and you haven't got any entries, then at the moment it just stays with question marks. It's really easy to fix that. You could do it yourself, because obviously the code is on a TryCatch. In fact, I could just fix that now while I'm talking about it, because it would just make sense. Obviously when this is trying to run and they haven't got any transactions, this is when our TryCatch takes place, because the first thing we try to do is we try to basically use a number which doesn't exist, right, when we're doing the loading application. So when our first number we try to use doesn't actually exist, like this app settings part, then we'll go down to the catch, which is here, and we'll just set the remaining budget text block dot text will be equal to the remaining plus, and it will be the app settings. It will be, I can't remember what I called it now, isn't it? The app settings total budget, yeah. So it will be app settings total budget dot toString. But obviously we need to add our currency in there as well. So let's go ahead and add that while I remember. Okay, cool. So that, in theory, should solve that problem. So if you've just started the app up and you enter a number, there you go. Our remaining amount is 50. So our budget is 50 and we've got 50 left because we haven't done anything. So now let me demonstrate. If you were to withdraw, say you're one of these people who is not very particular. I am. If I'm typing a number in, I will always add my 0. But in this case, let's say I'm not. I spent £7, or I think I've got in dollars actually. I think it's $7.90. I'm gonna say I spent it on food, and I'm gonna go ahead and finish that. And what it's done is, although I only put the 0.9, it's added the 0 here for me, so that you can see it's 7.90, and then up here in the remaining it's 42.10. So the 0 has been added on the end of this number. And then if we were to deposit 0.90, the way that you would normally write something, it is obviously going to know that we've used our zeros and it's going to be happy with that. So we'll just say this is loose change. So this is why we're adding it to our thing, because we found some loose change. So it takes away the 7.90, and then it pluses back on the 90 cents that we found on the floor or whatever, and it goes back up to $43. So at the moment this is obviously working on whatever budget you're on. So if you're in the 11th month and you didn't add any finance, then there'll be nothing there. But then in December it will remember that we did some transactions here, and it will show us the remaining budget for that particular month. So that's the end of this video, guys. I hope that one wasn't as confusing as the last. As always, I'll add the code to the website, so check on there for the resources. Check me out on Twitter. Don't forget to donate to my Patreon page, and I will see you in the next video.